since I was on a program called Inside, a personality show on cable TV with Heather Haven, I twisted the tables and I asked Heather to do a reciprocal deal, as in the days of Jack Benny and Fred Allen. Remember those days?
Yes.
Right.
Isn't it sad the way people are forgotten now, except for one book coming out now on Jack Benny, which means there'll be
It's
one
a
more.
wonderful book. I read it.
Is it good?
Yeah.
So I figured there'd be one more flurry on Jack Benny, then it's all over.
No, I don't think
No.
so. I really don't. No, people like that transcend time. I really believe
I
that.
hope I'm wrong. I hope she's right.
No, I think
gotta be right. I think so.
But
Yeah.
great
Look what's
star-
happening to George Burns. I mean, he
Yeah.
may very well
Well,
be
he's
the
alive.
Oscar this year. You
But
know?
Barney, great stars like Joe Penner, Eddie Cantor, nobody talks about those people anymore. It's sad in a way. I don't know what to say.
Well, a
But you
lot
know
of
who-
times it's because they weren't on film, or we didn't have tapes. Jack Benny will always live. Gracie Allen will always live.
Yeah.
They've had that tremendous revival.
yes.
How about Joan Davis? She had her own TV series.
Yeah,
She
yes.
was so big.
Sensational.
Yes, I
Nobody
remember.
talks
Mary
about
Joan.
And she, well, of course,
Yes.
she was in film too, and
Yeah,
so
but-
was Joe Penner, of course.
But
those
why is
films are
Joan
not
Davis
shown.
forgotten? Why is Joe Penner forgotten?
Well, everything in its time, you know, that type of humor was very popular at that point, and then it kind of died out and was replaced by other forms
Let me
of
say
humor.
that I'm chatting here with Art Ross, who'll talk about Psycho Cinema. I'm chatting here with Heather Haven of her own show. How do you want to summarize this little part about
No,
it?
I was just going to say, you know who is not forgotten is Al Jolson.
Right.
Just today, when driving over in the taxi, the driver had the radio on, and they were playing a whole medley of Al Jolson
That's true.
singing.
Well, what helped in his case was that movie with Larry Parks. That movie was so great
Yes.
that kept him
Now,
alive.
you take the Marx Brothers. We showed Duck Soup last night at Psycho Cinema. We packed the Fifth Avenue Cinema. People, all ages, all occupations,
Yes.
loved it. This is 43 years later. The Marx Brothers still work. They're still funny and rolling them in the eye.
Whenever there's a unique course being given, my friends, in movies, we try and inform ourselves and inform the audience, Barney, because we're very heavy into film on our program. And Art Ross, R-O-S-S, will tell me a little bit about Psycho Cinema. Give us a
Right.
a thumbnail description. of what
Well,
happens, Art.
right. As you know, Joe, there is a tremendous revival in the interest in film, particularly old film. You have spearheaded that for many years.
Thank you.
And what we're doing now is a kind of an interesting approach to it. We're taking the classic motion pictures like High Noon and White Heat, Duck Soup, and we are looking at them through a different pair of glasses from the inside out. In other words, we are examining the hidden meanings and the unconscious aspects of the films, even the aspects that the makers of the films themselves, the producers, the directors, and the actors, were not fully conscious of while they were making the film. And I've got a panel of psychiatrists and psychologists and film experts who each week look at the film and analyze the film from that point of view. And
And
For
it's taught
example,
at the New
though.
School for Social
it's
Research.
at the New School for
Like
Social
what?
Research.
But take High Noon. I think we all know High Noon.
Okay,
Yes.
now the High Noon, everybody thinks that this is a Western.
Right.
This is really an Eastern. By that I mean that there's a whole hidden message in High Noon that is not quite apparent to the people who are looking at that. That came out during the course of the McCarthy hearings. And it was a film that was made to suggest that society has to take on its responsibilities. Now, the town does not take on its responsibility and back the sheriff, who has to take it on by himself, and so he becomes, of course, the hero. And the town itself is, well, not exactly a villain, but they don't take on their social responsibilities. And the point of the film, and the makers of the film, was to point this out. Now, that is not apparent in the film. It's a great Western, but there are other aspects. you
Isn't
see.
that funny? Because when I saw that picture, I immediately got
Yeah.
that message.
Did you get that?
Well, when Thomas Mitchell stood up and started to eulogize
Yeah, right.
the sheriff and then slowly back down and take all the support away. I mean, I said, you
Yeah.
can equate that with today's politics.
Well,
where
people
they-
have sort of forgotten it because it was in 1952, around that time that the hearings occurred. But Mitchell, it was very interesting. You mentioned Mitchell because that was a tremendous piece of casting, because Mitchell, throughout his career, played the kind of heroic reporter who always backed the idealist.
Absolutely, yes,
And Mr.
yes.
Smith Goes to Washington and all the Frank Capra
But always
pictures.
That's why-
ineffectual.
yeah.
Thomas Mitchell always played
But-
that ineffectual
right.
person who could not do it himself, but was aware of it.
But the switch in High Noon now comes when he, instead of backing the play of the sheriff, after he says some nice things about Cooper, he
He's worried
withdraws
about
and
his
he
own
says,
personal
gee, you know,
safety."
you fellows, meaning Cooper, have kind of brought us a problem in the town, and now we can't solve it, so you better get the heck out of town, and we'll have to solve it with another sheriff. So Mitchell, who kind of represented a certain point of view, had switched from the idealist to the guy that's kind of being overly cautious.
This
and
man is the
careful.
noted film historian and lecturer. His name is Arthur Ross, and he is an expert. When you were a kid going to the movies, you ever think you'd get this involved?
I
This
did,
deep?
yes. As a
Even
matter-
then?
I did, many years ago. As a matter of fact, I grew up in the Bronx. Some
So
of
did
you other
everybody.
people. And of course, my cousin is Stanley Kubrick, and we went to movies together, and we kind of analyzed films. We were always interested.
You know that
in
many of the
film
old-timers
industry.
don't want to make movies. I mean, even a fellow like Frank Capra, he
Yeah.
could make movies. He's got offers,
Right.
but he refuses to make today's kind of movies. There's something...
Yeah.
But do
Well,
you
this is-
think
this
they
is the
really
giant
have
who-
to?
Well, this
though?
is
directed
very
that show.
interesting about Capra.
Fred
because,
Zinnemann, wasn't it?
Zinnemann
Yeah,
did that.
sure.
Capra is a guy that I show in my courses,
Right.
and he doesn't somehow quite work today the way he did then.
Right.
Marx Brothers, you can see, and
Oh, I don't
they
think
love
so.
it. But Capra, the kids feel that his idealism is a little bit corny today, and they don't quite get with it the way they would some of the other actors.
Do you give this course at the new school?
I give it at the new school, yes.
Why don't you come and analyze Broadway shows and find intermedia?
Well, I
Come
would
see
like
Grace.
to.
Let us know what the
Yes.
meeting is.
I would love to. I would love to. Now, as a matter of fact, we are talking with some major studios about analyzing pictures and what might work. I want to use this panel as almost a means of projecting into the future what kinds of films will work, such as disaster movies. I've just done and completed a whole work on with some psychologists on the meaning, the hidden meaning of disaster movies and why they work and why people are spending all this money, millions of dollars to go to see them. And it's kind
Isn't
of-
it just that they want to see for themselves that things can be worse?
well, in a sense, yes. In a sense, what it is basically is that it's we're living in an age of tremendous tension and a certain amount of violence seething underneath.
Right, misery
And
loves
this
company.
becomes a tremendous release. It's a cathartic effect which works, and people are paying good money to see it. Because the great thing about the disaster movie is that no matter what's going on in the disaster film, you come out. You are a survivor after you've paid
Right.
your $4.
Yes.
That's right.
And it gives you a great feeling of relief to know that, hey, I've gone through this earthquake, I've gone down with the ship, I've gone down with the plane, and yet I am a survivor. And so I think that's part of the
Well, I
psychological...
saw Titanic 3 times. The third time, the
Right.
ship didn't go down. No, what we seem to be doing today, ladies and
Right.
gentlemen, is analyzing movies and moviegoers and what they were seeking and getting 30 or 40 years ago, and what's different about what they're seeking or getting today, because their wants are different, it seems, today, right, Heather? I mean,
Right.
they wouldn't
So
go
now
to
the
see...
key is to be able to develop this that you can predict in advance.
Right,
Well,
that's the
this
key.
is exactly what we're kind of getting to, and we hope to analyze for some of the studios, because obviously you're spending millions and millions of dollars on a picture today, and you're rolling the dice if you don't kind of get into the viewpoint of, hey, what really works and why does it work with the people at a particular time. See, I believe, for example, a disaster film has peaked already. I think that we have gone through it. I think we may see a few more, but as you can see with the Hindenburg, it's starting to level off. I think that...
You feel as though it's that, or the fact that it wasn't as well made as it might.
That was part of it, but I also think that we have gone through the cycle, and this,
Yes.
by the way, is nothing new. As Joe knows, being the expert in nostalgia, disaster films are not new. They were very big in the 30s and even in the 20s. Noah's Ark,
Oh, Buster Keaton.
1928.
I get a
Joe
little
Bryant.
bit suspicious about trends and
Yeah.
commenting on trends or
Right.
predicting trends or saying this is the trend we're in. Because it seems to go that in most aspects of the entertainment field, especially probably films, it rules out about a very successful book.
Yes.
And right afterwards, everywhere you went, everything is love story. Everything is
Yes.
love. That's all that people want is love. And then, of course, the next couple of copies were not very well done, nor were they inspired, nor were they based on anything so successful, previously successful, like the book Love Story. And the movies died, and then the word went around, love is dead. Love is dead. I think that when you get into this kind of stuff, although what you're
No,
doing
I
is
think
fascinating,
you're right there.
it rules out what really makes a picture work, and that's the fact that it happens to really be terrific. It happens to be
Yes.
inspired in its doing.
And magic. There's
And
a
magic,
magical
and it creates a
combination
magic.
Yeah.
that works, even for Broadway. You can have so many different
Especially on
combinations
Broadway.
that if you have a director who doesn't click, no matter what, it will not work. And I think that's true
Well,
on
there's
Broadway.
magic inherent in the material, in the piece,
Yes.
and if it isn't there,
And
it
the
won't work.
timing.
But the Hindenburg, for example, it's really unfair to gauge
It wasn't
whether or
as
not
well
we
done
are
as some of
into
the
disaster
others.
films or not by the Hindenburg, because that was a poor film, and also a very hard film to make. It was a bad idea. How do you make a film where the disaster happens during the credits? I mean, where you know already what it, you know.
What do you
At the
think,
end of
Bonnie?
the film.
What's your evaluation?
Well, I just think that so often, especially in the television field, if you get a successful show that really pays off, so many people climb on the bandwagon, come up. I mean,
There's
you've
the
seen it with
copycatting
the
approach.
with the panel shows. You've seen it with the game shows. You've seen it with Western, and they go through a cycle, and then it's the All in the Family, Rhoda, Phyllis,
Right.
and then they
Super
go
Cop.
back to
Yes.
Super Cop, and then back to the Great Defender. You know, and there's a whole series. But then yet, if somebody through the years has got some idea for a great movie or a great TV show, and he comes up with it at a time when it doesn't seem to be ripe,
Right.
he can't. He finds it very
Yeah.
difficult to get
Right,
it
Art?
out.
But it's true. But to answer your question from before, there are trends. For example, during the Depression, when everybody was down, we had this tremendous influx, as Joe knows, of all those Busby Berkeley musicals
They were fun.
to make
You
people
know,
laugh
talking
and
about
happy.
Busby Berkeley, Heather, we
Yes.
gotta ask Barney about a certain choreographer and director who's got a magical touch named Bob Fosse. What do you want to
yes.
ask? What do you want to ask this man
Yes.
about?
Well,
Bob
I'm only too happy to talk about Bob because
First of all, how does Bob work with, now Gwen Verdon is considered to be the greatest Fosse dancer ever, but now you are not a dancer. Am I right? Have I? Now,
Well,
but how does he work with you?
I've
You
been a finalist in the Harvest Moon Ball.
okay?
Bob Fosse
Okay.
doesn't know that.
I see. I see. But
Nobody
when you
cares.
did Cellophane Man,
Yes.
which is your piece de resistance and wonderful, how does he approach you? Basically, a non-dancer. How does he deal with you? Was it easy to communicate with you?
Well, let me say the first thing. I auditioned for Michael Chertoff. Thank God, he's a great talent in that, and he saw at least some kind of promise in my performance and asked me to come back for Bob Fosse. I then started a career of auditions because I auditioned for at least 5 or 6 more times, each time going to be the final. And finally, one night, my agent called me about 5 o'clock and said, Fosse wants to know if he can have your home phone. I said, you can have whatever I have, you know. So he called me and he said, I'm over at the studio, could you come over and meet? And I went and he showed me 5 or 6 steps and I did them. And he shook hands with me, he says, you know, where have you been? And I said, well, I've been out there like 1,000 other people waiting for this moment for you to say that. But he then never confided in me that I had gotten the part, and I waited another week and a half, really strung out, before I found out. And then he showed me all the steps and let me work it out so that it fit me. But the steps, I know the homework that he did, because I know that he used to go to that studio all night long while cutting the picture Lenny and doing all those
That's what put him in the hospital, all that hard work.
and I would be there. He'd be there 3 and 4 or 5 o'clock working out the steps, and he worked out my steps and the little things that I do to such perfection that you knew the character immediately. Once you see the dance, you know how that person feels. It's a masterful thing. I think Bob Fosse is probably the greatest director in the world.
Art, have you seen that man in Chicago?
No.
You've got to see Barney
Terrific.
Martin in
He's
Chicago.
fabulous.
I
You know
was
what
just
I-
commenting to
Yeah.
Barney. I saw him in the Maxwell House commercial,
Yeah.
and it's terrific.
You know what I wished
That-
when you
that
did the
was great.
Cellophane Man? That you had a whole bunch of men with you on the
Yeah.
stage, dressed in cellophane, and the number would go on for a long time. But it was you all by yourself, and I would have liked to see more people in that scene.
Well, I always, I even asked Bob Fosse, I said, Bob, can I have another chorus? And it seems like I should have another. He says, no, leave him, you know.
Keep them wanting more, like I wanted, right, Heather?
That's his whole philosophy. He says,
was-
get it at the end.
Heather met a young lady over there. There's a young playwright named Peter Kopani, and based on the reviews, he's the new Arthur Miller, new Edward Albee, and Peter Kopani was here, and he wants us to meet his leading lady, Gwen Sumter, and she's
Gwen.
very exciting.
And very talented, very bright, too. We've been
Very.
chatting for a while. She's a very bright
We've been
girl.
talking here about the who's who and what's what of Greece, and we're going to invite the audience in again, and how Greece came into being with Wasteman and Fox, and with Barney Martin, who's one of the dynamite actors. Do you sometimes have to turn down movie parts and commercials?
Well, you know that I'm going out for 2 weeks to do to co-star with Tony Randall in the Tony Randall show for Mary Tyler Moore. In fact, I leave this Saturday. Well,
You're a busy fella. And
thank God.
Thank
Wasn't
God.
always that way.
He's got what they want. He's got that magnetism.
good man.
We're going to show a couple scenes from the movies that Art Ross represents in his course. And Heather Haven, I was on Heather's show, and 14,000 people told me they saw me, but I found out why not. Not that her show isn't popular, but it was on just before the Rangers game. And TV, the lead-in is very important,
Yes.
you know. I mean, the show that follows you is important, right?
Yes, I know, but we make it on our own because it was in our, you know, we have a guide now. We have cable TV has our own guide, and it says everything that's listed, and Joe Franklin was listed, so they watched us because we were on. That's why.
It's a
Had
pretty-
nothing to do with the Rangers.
Pretty name, Heather Haven. These words, these pretty announcements, and we're going to meet another beautiful lady. Stay with us, please.